To most of the galaxy, humans were the new kids in a very old playground. The Galactic Empire, an ancient, sprawling coalition of war-born species, regarded Earth's entry into Yakor with a mix of mild amusement and cautious skepticism. Their emissaries smiled and spoke of interstellar unity, but their eyes weighed humanity like merchants sizing up an untested blade. When the Empire invited Earth to contribute a single warrior to their elite combat academy on Verilion Prime, it was framed as an honor, but everyone knew it was a test. One human among thousands of hardened killers. A ceremonial pawn. They didn't expect Commander Juno Vega. She stepped off the dropship with the posture of someone who had walked through fire and learned to enjoy the heat. Tall, dark-skinned, with iron-gray eyes that didn't blink much, she wore her Earth Forces armor like a second skin, weathered, functional, clean of metals. No flourish, just purpose. Behind her followed 3 more humans, her squad. Their boots clanked against the polished duralloy of the hangar bay, earning sideways glances from assembled alien officers. The whispering started before their footfalls faded. 4 of them, hissed a Kelvin tactician, her voice like scraped glass. The invitation was for 1. Support staff, muttered an athlete admiral. Surely, the humans didn't flinch. They'd heard worse during first contact. Juno's squad consisted of experts, each hand-picked not for conformity, but for capability. First was Dr. Malik Okoro, a lean man with cybernetic augmentations peeking from under his collar. His fingers tapped invisible keys in the air, augment-linked diagnostics, always running. He had 3 PhDs, a quiet intensity, and a fondness for solving problems with broken things. Next was Riley Tam, the youngest, carrying more curiosity than caution. A linguist, anthropologist, and dreamer, she walked as if the stars themselves might lean closer if she just looked up long enough. Her cheeks still held the sun-kissed color of Earth, and her pack bulged with notebooks, a flute, and something that chirped occasionally. Last, Boomer Callahan, demolitions expert and certified chaos vector. Short, stocky, all grin and gum. He wore a vest lined with what could generously be called creative explosives. No one ever found his official military record, but stories trailed behind him like smoke. They were Earth's offering. Not the biggest, not the strongest, but theirs. As the squad approached the ceremonial dais, the holographic banners of the Empire flared, golden sigils of warlords and insectoid empires flickering in solemn pomp. The presiding officer, a hulking Tharkan general, loomed like a steel cliff. "Commander Vega," the general rumbled, "you are hereby recognized as Earth's representative to the Order of Eternal Valor." Juno nodded once, acknowledged. The general paused. "As per protocol, your service record is archived in our command registry. For transparency, your kill count has been logged." A slight pause. Behind the general, a console flared. One of the aides, a 4-eyed Zarn technician, froze. Her fingers twitched. She stared at the display, blinked, then slowly turned to whisper to the general. His eyes narrowed. "Repeat that." The aide did, this time louder. Others turned. The console projected the number. 1,428 confirmed kills. 73 high-value targets. 9 planetary engagements. A silence fell over the hall like a dropped stone. One by one, alien officers recalibrated their assumptions. Boomer chuckled under his breath. Knew they'd check. Took bets on how many would crap themselves. Riley elbowed him. "Sure." The general's voice dropped an octave. "These numbers, are they accurate?" "They're the ones you have clearance to see," Juno replied. "Sir, that did it." The ceremony ended quickly after that. Formalities trimmed, salutes exchanged. But the air had changed, no longer tinged with amusement. Now it carried weight. Later, in the quarters assigned to them, Spartan rooms of silver paneling and recycled air, Okoro adjusted his neural interface and spoke without looking up. "You realize they're afraid of you now. They weren't afraid before?" Juno asked, peeling off her gauntlets. "They thought you were symbolic. A gesture. Now they're recalculating." Boomer tossed himself onto a bunk and folded his hands behind his head. "Good. Maybe now they won't stick us in the tourist section of training. Riley was seated cross-legged, scribbling in her journal. I don't want to intimidate them. I want them to see what we're capable of. We just showed them. Juno said. No, Riley murmured. We showed them what you did, not what we are. Juno turned to look at her, then nodded slightly. Fair point. A tone chimed. A message from command. Training begins at dawn. Juno stood, looking out the viewport. Virillion Prime skyline was a tangle of spires and glowing veins of traffic, threading across alien architecture older than Earth's recorded history. I don't care if they fear me, she said, but they will respect us. Boomer cracked open a ration bar. And if they don't, Juno turned, her eyes glinting. Then we'll make them. The day after their arrival, the Empire's military academy thrust the humans into first test of many, a ceremonial simulation meant to display their worth. It wasn't meant to be dangerous, but nothing ever was when you put humans up against something that didn't understand what they were. Juno stood with her arms crossed, watching the sprawling training ground, a glittering expanse of artificial desert, stretched before her. At the far end, a dozen alien soldiers were preparing to face the new recruits, their weapons gleaming with deadly precision. They looked eager to prove that humanity had no place among them. A Tharkan officer barked an order, and the alien squad surged forward with military precision, each step calculated and synchronized. Juno exhaled slowly. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Beside her, Dr. Malik Okoro adjusted his glasses. The digital interface embedded in his eye sockets flickered as he pulled up schematics of the alien soldiers. They're using adapted gravtech rifles. Deadly from 400 meters. We'll need to be quick. Understood, Juno replied, her tone even. Ready yourself. Riley Tam hovered at the edge of the group, staring in wonder at the alien formations. Do you think they have a ritual or something? Some sort of chant before battle? Riley, Okoro's voice was dry. We're about to be shot at. Can we save the cultural study for later? Right, she muttered, adjusting the array of translation devices at her belt. Just wondering. And then there was Boomer. The demolitions expert was crouched low, adjusting his makeshift gadgets, muttering to himself as if the entire combat simulation were a mere inconvenience. They want a show. We'll give them a show. The Empire's warriors had no idea what they were in for. The signal to begin was delivered by a flicker of the holographic display, and in an instant, the ground shook as the alien squad moved forward. But Juno and her team weren't standing still. Boomer threw a small device into the air. It exploded with a pop that was more like a firecracker than grenade, showering the air with glittering particles. One of the alien soldiers flinched, distracted by the unexpected flash. That was all Juno needed. Go, she commanded. Juno moved like lightning, closing the distance between her squad and the enemy with military precision. In a blur of motion, she dodged incoming fire and launched herself forward, her body a well-trained blur of speed. Okoro followed her lead, using his environment to his advantage, ducking behind a supply crate and launching a makeshift EMP pulse that fried one of the alien soldiers' comm systems. The soldier's rifle fell uselessly to ground. Meanwhile, Riley, ever the dreamer, had a different approach. While the others fought, she crouched low, her eyes locked on the patterns of movement, the subtle language of battle. They're too coordinated, she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. I need to disrupt their patterns. With quick hands, Riley modified the translator device at her belt into something entirely new, a jammer that could mess with the aliens' communication network. She activated it, and suddenly the soldiers' coordination faltered. The tight formations broke apart as each member tried to readjust. Confused and disoriented, Boomer saw the opening and capitalized on it, launching a series of flash grenades from his pack. Each burst of light and sound rattled the alien senses further, disorienting them enough for Juno to pick them off one by one. A quick jab here, a swift takedown there, and they were falling like dominoes. When the last of the alien soldiers fell, the holographic environment flickered, signaling the end of the test. The humans stood amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily but unharmed. The Empire's officer stood frozen, watching with mixed disbelief and grudging admiration. Juno turned to her team. "Nice work." Riley grinned, a little too brightly. They were so predictable once we broke their communication. Boomer slapped her on the back, knocking her forward slightly. Hell yeah, who knew they'd crumble with a little bit of human chaos? He looked around at the fallen soldiers. I didn't even use half my toys. Okoro, meanwhile, was already scanning the fallen aliens, looking for useful tech. I've identified their weak points. Their weapons are robust, but not impervious. A sudden voice broke the camaraderie. Impressive. Juno turned. It was a Tharkan officer, the one who had been overseeing the exercise. His yellow eyes glittered coldly. Your methods unorthodox, but effective. We will see how you perform in more traditional settings. Juno nodded, but there was a faint glimmer of suspicion in her eyes. The officer's tone was clipped, his posture rigid. He wasn't impressed in the same way her team was. He was already thinking about how to tear them down. Later, in their barracks, Okoro was the first to speak. You can feel it, can't you? They don't like us. At least not yet. No surprise, Juno said, pulling off her gloves. We're not here to make friends. Boomer let out a low chuckle. Maybe not, but they can't ignore us now. Riley, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, fiddled with her translator again, making adjustments. The real challenge will come when we have to fight for something that matters, she said quietly, her gaze distant. This was just a warm-up. Okoro looked at her, sensing the weight behind her words. You think they'll test us more? Harder? They'll test us until they break us, Riley replied. And when they do, we'll be ready to break right back. Juno considered this, then nodded slowly. The soft hum of the lights overhead was the only sound in the room. She was right. The Empire wasn't about to let humans into their ranks without a struggle, but the tests wouldn't break them. Not if she had anything to say about it. And as for the humans' kill count, it was nothing compared to what was coming. The briefing room on Verilion Prime was colder than usual. The glow of overhead lights cast long shadows across the sleek black tables, where alien officers sat in uncomfortable silence. On the far end of the room, a massive holographic map of the galaxy flickered ominously. Juno Vega stood at the front, her arms crossed, her gaze piercing the table before her. She knew what they were about to say. The report is troubling, said the Tharkan general, his voice a deep growl. The outer sector of the Sidrian system has gone dark. Communication ceased 22 standard hours ago. All vessels in the region are unaccounted for. Juno's brow furrowed. Pirates? Sabotage? The general's expression didn't change. We are unsure, but we suspect it's something more. We need you and your team to investigate. Juno glanced at her squad. Riley's face lit up with the same curiosity that always sparked whenever there was something unknown, something alien to discover. Okoro was already analyzing the data streams on his wrist interface, but his frown deepened with every piece of intel he processed. Boomer cracked his knuckles, a grin spreading across his face, clearly excited by the prospect of destruction. Understood, Juno said, turning back to the general. We'll leave at once. The journey to the Sidrian system took 3 days, and as they approached, the quiet of space seemed to grow more ominous with each passing hour. The communications blackout was absolute. No distress signals, no trade transmissions, not even the faintest whisper of activity. The first sign that something was wrong came when they entered the Sidrian system's outer ring. Instead of the expected scattered debris of a failed skirmish or battle, there was a chilling emptiness. No ships, no wreckage, just silence. Boomer eyed the empty space, tapping the edge of his weapon. Where'd everyone go? This is too quiet. We're in the right place, Juno said, scanning the surroundings. Stay alert. Something's off. They continued forward, the stark emptiness pressing in on them. There was no sign of hostile ships, no sign of anything, except the unnatural, slowly drifting orbit of the planet Sidria's moon, a moon that had been abandoned for centuries. Any sign of the fleet? Juno asked Okoro, who was furiously tapping at his wrist console. Not a thing, he muttered. The systems blacked out like someone hit a switch. There's no power being transmitted anywhere. Juno sighed, her instinct sharpening. Prepare for boarding. If someone's still alive down there, we'll find them. They docked on Sidria's abandoned moon, where a small research outpost once stood. Now, the place was a ruin. Empty, cracked walls, overgrown with a strange, fungal growth. An unsettling calm hung over everything. Riley was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. It's like the people just vanished. Or worse, Boomer added. What if they didn't? Juno's eyes narrowed. Stay focused. We'll check the comms tower first. If we can restore power, we might get a signal. As they moved deeper into the outpost, the walls seemed to close in. The air was thick with the smell of rot, and strange shadows danced in the corners. It didn't feel like a place of just abandonment. It felt like something had forced it into stillness. Boomer reached down to inspect a nearby crate. He pulled out a few strange tools, tossing them aside. Doesn't look like anyone's been here in months. Riley crouched beside a faded datasheet on the floor, her fingers brushing over the alien script. These markings, they're new. I've seen this before, but not like this. Okoro joined her, squinting at the data. It's an old defensive code. It's been tampered with. Someone's trying to cover their tracks. Juno held up a hand, cutting off their chatter. Her senses were screaming now, alerting her to something that was off. Something's not right. Get to the comms tower. Now. The group made their way down the main corridor, the air growing thicker with every step. As they neared the central command room, the lights flickered. Juno's grip tightened around her weapon. They were no longer alone. A low, vibrating hum filled the room as the lights buzzed and shifted to an unnatural frequency. Then the voice came, soft but unmistakable. You shouldn't have come. The voice was female, but cold and mechanical, distorting in ways that weren't natural. A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, slender, and impossibly fast. The figure's eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and as it approached, Juno recognized the unmistakable markings of Velka, a long-lost, deadly species that had been wiped from the records long ago. We were warned, the Velka said, her voice dripping with a sickening mixture of pity and venom. You should have stayed with your people. Juno raised her weapon, but before she could fire, the Velka moved in a blur, knocking the rifle from her hand. Okoro's hand shot to his tool belt, but another Velka emerged from the darkness, her metallic limbs wrapping around his arms, pinning him down. The Velka leader laughed softly, the sound echoing in the empty room. You humans, so predictable, so fragile. Riley gasped, her translator crackling with static as she tried to understand the Velka's alien tongue. We didn't come here to... You came here because your kind is always curious, the Velka hissed, and your curiosity will get you killed. Boomer's voice rang out behind them. You really think you can take us down that easily? With a grin, he launched a grenade directly at the Velka leader. The explosion sent a wave of energy through the room, shaking the walls and sending the alien assailants reeling. Juno wasted no time, sweeping up a fallen weapon and charging forward. The Velka were fast, but their overconfidence was their undoing. As the dust cleared, Juno tackled the leader to the ground, delivering a brutal blow with her fist. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity, she said, her voice low and deadly. The Velka's eyes widened in disbelief as Juno finished the job, her movement swift and lethal. The room fell silent once again. But this time, the silence was different. It wasn't oppressive. It was empty, void of all the threats that had once loomed in the darkness. Juno stood, dusting herself off, her chest heaving. She looked at her team, Boomer, Riley, Okoro, and saw the same realization in their eyes. Everyone, Juno said voice steely, we're just getting started. The battle for the Sidrian moon had barely ended before the reality of their situation began to set in. The Velka were a threat, but worse, they were a warning. There was something darker and more insidious behind their attack. As the dust settled around the abandoned research outpost, Juno stood tall, her breath steady but her mind racing. The Velka leader had whispered something before she died. Your curiosity will get you killed. Juno wasn't one to take threats lightly, especially not from a creature as deadly as a Velka. But the words gnawed at her mind, a quiet whisper that refused to fade. "We need to get back to the Empire," she said, glancing over her shoulder at her team. Riley was still staring at the fallen Velka, her wide eyes haunted. Okoro was checking his equipment, his brow furrowed in concentration. Boomer, ever the optimist, was already picking through the wreckage for anything useful. "Agreed," Okoro said, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've found traces of high-grade energy readings here. This place was more than just a research outpost. Whatever the Velka were after, it's something bigger than we thought." Juno turned to him, her mind working quickly. "What's your read on it? Can we track it?" Okoro's eyes met hers, his expression serious. "It's hard to say. The data's corrupted, but I think they've been experimenting with something. It's all connected to the missing fleet. I don't think the Velka were the ones who wiped them out. Whoever or whatever did that, they left their mark here." Boomer, his arms crossed, snorted. "Sounds like we're getting deeper into something big." "Great. We were just supposed to test out the whole human warrior thing. Now we're hunting ghosts." "We're hunting a threat to the Empire," Juno corrected, her voice tight. "We're not leaving until we know who or what is behind this." Riley stepped forward, clutching her datapad as if it were a lifeline. "I think we should be looking at the bigger picture. The Velka weren't here just for this outpost. They were looking for something." "What?" Juno asked, already turned ahead toward the transport. Riley glanced at the ruins around them, her expression distant. "They were searching for us, not the technology. The Velka aren't the only ones who want to know what humanity can do." They returned to their ship, the Resolute, and set course to the heart of the Empire's space. The journey back was silent, everyone lost in their thoughts. As the stars passed by in blurs of light, Juno felt the weight of the past few days pressing down on her. The Empire had welcomed them with the usual political intrigue and covert testing, but the stakes had changed. There were forces out there who wanted humanity's blood, not just for its resources, but for its potential. As the Resolute made the jump to hyperspace, the console flashed with an incoming message. "It's from the Empire's Central Command," Okoro said, a note of concern in his voice. Juno walked over to him. The message was short and blunt. "Return immediately. You are needed for an urgent mission. Your previous actions have attracted unwanted attention. Do not engage further with the Velka." Juno's hand tightened around the console. "They're pulling us back because we're too deep." Riley crossed her arms, her lips pressed tight. "They're not going to let us finish this, are they?" "Not if they think it's too dangerous," Boomer said, grinning despite the situation. "But they're not in control here. We are." "Boomer's right," Juno said, turning to face her squad. "We don't answer to the Empire anymore. We answer to each other." The message lingered in the air, its directive clear, but Juno wasn't backing down. The Empire had underestimated humanity. It had underestimated her. The Velka were just the beginning. 2 days later, the Resolute re-entered the Sidrian system. The eerie emptiness still hung over it like a shroud, and the distant flicker of the once active fleet was still absent. But now, Juno and her team were ready. They weren't just soldiers. They were hunters. They navigated deeper into the system, heading for a forgotten outpost deep within a nearby asteroid belt, the last known location of the missing fleet. Upon arrival, the team found an unsettling sight. The asteroid field was littered with debris, ships torn apart like paper in a storm. But there was no sign of battle, no scorch marks, no wreckage from weapons. Just ships floating aimlessly, destroyed from within. "Can you get a lock on their black box data?" Juno asked Okoro, her voice steady despite the growing unease. Okoro was already on it, his hands flying over his wrist interface. "I'm trying. There's too much interference from something else. This doesn't feel like an accident." A sudden alert flashed on the screen. Anomaly detected. Unidentified signal. Boomer raised an eyebrow. "That's new. We have company." "Possibly," Juno said, stepping toward the airlock. "Ready yourselves." As the airlock doors hissed open, the crew stepped into the silent void. Their Amidst the destroyed ships, a strange craft sat undisturbed, dark, sleek, and foreign. Its design was unlike anything Juno had seen before. "We don't know who or what did this," Juno said, her eyes scanning the craft. "But we're about to find out." They approached cautiously, weapons drawn, but the silence of space felt oppressive, like an unseen presence was watching them. Then, suddenly, the craft's hatch slid open with a low hum. Figures stepped out, figures that didn't look entirely human, but they moved with a fluidity that seemed almost familiar. Juno's heart raced. This wasn't just about humanity anymore. This was something larger, and it was all tied to that unspoken threat she had felt ever since the Velka had fallen. "We're not alone anymore," she murmured, her eyes locked on the figures emerging from the shadows. "And whatever they want, they're not going to let us leave until they've taken it." The game had changed. The universe had just become a much smaller, much more dangerous place.